Yes, welcome back to another show with an amazing guest. She's the state chair of the Libertarian Party of Idaho, and she has just an amazing story that I think everybody should hear. And I'm very excited to have her. Let's bring her on, Jinni.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. How are you?
Doing great.
Yeah, how's the weather up there in Idaho?
Actually, we're having perfect weather right now, so it's a
Really?
nice spring in between the hot and the snow.
Okay, yeah, that's about what I expected. We're 75 to 80 here, have been for a couple of weeks.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah. Yeah, but then it gets brutal during the summer, but I'll take that over you guys' cold. I lived up in one winter where it snowed the whole winter and stayed there. No thanks. So, like we were talking last night, and you were doing a lot of sound check and a lot of lighting equipment. You guys have a lot of big things going on in Idaho, and I don't think a lot of people know that. So, why don't you tell us about what's going on up in your state?
Yeah, Liberty is alive and well in Idaho. And so I have been active as state chair since August of last year. And in that time, we've been really busy turning on all the lights and making sure everyone knows that, the Libertarian Party is active, we're alive, we're doing things, and the party's rocking. So one of those big projects is we're getting a YouTube together, and we're trying to really enable all our content creators. And so we've just invested a lot of money into the setup and the lighting and the equipment. So this is a nice test drive for that.
Yeah, you guys are growing big time up there. I'm seeing a lot of it in your comment section and talking to you. And how are you getting that done?
Well, we had a great start. Rob Oates, the previous chair, he really held ground. He was chair for 14 years, which is one of the longest runs, if not the longest, the second longest. So I give him a lot of credit. He held down the fort. He kept things going. He kept us in ballot access, which is the most important thing.
Wow.
And then I think, you get tired after 14 years.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So when I walked in, I wasn't looking to be chair, but there was a lot of excitement because I come with a good, strong background and experience.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
First thing I did was, like I said, I turned on the lights. The big focus and the thing I can do is get everything up and running. We got a new email server. We got a newsletter out there. We freshened up our Facebook and our website, got a database going, started pulling voter data, all these things to just give us the material and the tools needed to get things done. So I know there's a lot of controversy in the state. There's an influx of Californians coming.
We talked about that last night. Tell us a little bit more about that. I don't think everybody knows about that either, about how actual severe it is.
Yeah. Well, the city I live in, which is Eagle, Idaho, the last stats run showed that 46% of the residents had moved from out of state within the last 5 years. So
wow, 46%. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, all from California. You said some of them are coming from Los Angeles, right? It's like a 20-hour drive.
From Los Angeles, but they're coming in from Oregon, Utah, Colorado. It's mixed bag, but a good majority of that is Californians, and a lot of them fleeing the state. They're very proud and honest about why they left. And I was one of them.
Right. Well, it sounds like you guys have a lot of recruiting. The potential for recruiting is way up there.
We do. Yeah. People are fleeing California because they are tired of that Democratic pull. But a lot of them are actually kind of shocked because California Republicans are not the same as Idaho Republicans.
Right.
And so there is that culture shock that they go through of like, whoa, I thought I was conservative, but turns out I'm okay with gays and I'm okay with cannabis.
Right. Yeah, that's an easy push in our direction.
It is. And so you say, hey, there's a third option that actually respects all those things that the conservatives push, but we also respect all those social values as well. Welcome to the Libertarian Party.
That's right.
So
go ahead.
Okay. We just hit, 1.6% of the voter registration.
Nice.
So I think we are sixth best performing when it comes to saturation for registration in the states.
Wow. So in all of the states, Idaho is top 6.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. So y'all are clearly on the right path. Y'all are doing things really, really well. That's incredible. And I didn't really know that until I started digging into it. And then you and I talked, and I started getting on the Libertarian Party of Idaho page and Twitter. And I'm like, wow, these guys have they have a lot of reach. They have a lot more than a lot of other states. That's for sure. I pay attention to that because I follow a lot of these Facebook pages and Twitters, and they're just not doing the activity that you've got. And I think that says a lot because our world is a lot of social media right now.
Yeah, especially with the pandemic, everyone's home and they're online. And so kind of capitalizing on that and making sure we can't do festivals, we can't do booths. So virtually reaching out and making sure we have an active presence. Plus, there's plenty of things going on in the news to be pushing out there from a federal level to a state level.
There is a lot of content out there. I am very thankful for that. Probably shouldn't be as thankful, but yeah, us content creators are very thankful for it. So you said that you had left California. Tell us about how you got started over there, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I grew up, naive to politics. I had a Republican parent and a Democratic parent, and they did not get along and they didn't talk politics. And so a lot of ways I grew up, scared to get involved. That was a no topic in our house. But once I got out there, I realized there's so much I was not prepared for. And it wasn't until about Gary Johnson's that I found out there's a third option, and it is right in line with everything that I was able to pull. Having two parents on both sides, I saw the good in what they were trying to represent and what they were voting for, and I also saw the fallacies. And so, Libertarian Party really does balance those differences.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you come to terms with that? In what age were you that you decided, you know what, I found a middle road? You said it was Gary Johnson that kind of tipped you, but you had to have been kind of out of balance there for a while. Both of my parents are divorced. Both are fully conservative Trumpers. So I didn't have that confusion, right? So tell us about how growing up with that feeling.
Yeah, it's confusing and it's intimidating. You don't want to get involved and you don't know how to get involved. And I think a lot of citizens in the nation feel that way. Yeah. If you don't know enough and you don't know what these parties do and what they represent, and you're only hearing one side, it's scary. And I stumbled into libertarianism, and a lot of that I think had to do with the technology background, especially being in the Silicon Valley. Yeah. I actually got involved in the hacker community and was fundraising for the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
Oh, wow.
And so, those who don't know, they're like digital rights activists, but for online, they're the ones who fought wiretapping from the government. Your right to jailbreak your iPhone. And so there's a lot of these civil rights issues, very libertarian leaning, even though they're nonpartisan. But they were started by John Barrow, who was a libertarian.
Oh, wow.
And so, getting my feet in there and really kind of pushing for these liberties on a digital front is what really stirred that fire and got me excited about what's happening.
That's awesome because I have the same feeling. I watched through this last 2020 campaign and really kind of watching Spike's background. And I think at the forefront, that media push and what you're doing, I think is obviously working big time. Obviously, he's got that media background. You've got the communications background. We were just talking last night. I was like, wow, I can't believe how deep your resume is. So you used to be the former Northern California communications director for Gary Johnson's 2016 campaign, right?
I did. That was the thing that pushed me into libertarianism full time. So, I got excited about Gary Johnson in 2016. That's where it really pushed me into being like, this is the guy. We need to get his voice out there. And nothing was getting done. And so I reached out to the local county chapter of the Libertarian Party. Was like, hey guys, what's happening? And it was a bunch of guys, at a coffee shop, and they're very passionate, but they weren't doing a lot. And I think they were really excited to see somebody young come in and eager to actually roll up the sleeves and get things done. So they
Right.
did not hesitate to say, here's what you can do. Here are the resources. And I was really lucky to be in Santa Clara County because I had the benefit of working with Joe Dean, Mary Jingle, and Mark Hinkle. Those are all
Wow.
former national committee, two chairs and a secretary. And so I
Wow.
got all their experience and that wealth of knowledge and history that really mentored me through the process.
Yeah, talking about being the right person for the right job at the right time. Oh man. Wow. Yeah. So like we talked about last night, Santa Clara County, that comes across the radar every news cycle or every election cycle. I mean, that's a big deal over there.
They're at the heart of the Democratic Party's master plan in a lot of ways. You know, what they do is how basically what California follows, and what California does is what the rest of the nation tends to follow. So there's a lot of pressure and a lot of news on what's happening there. But it's a huge Democratic stronghold. A lot of corruption, a lot of, interesting plays happening there.
Right.
And I think that's what lit the fire under me even harder, because you start seeing those levels of corruption, you start seeing how bad it is, and that just makes you really want to get in there and do something to fix it.
Right. And that's after that, you kind of decided to get into the Gary Johnson 2016 campaign, which is really awesome. So tell us about that experience. I think a lot of us would love to hear that.
Yeah, well, California is huge. So they split the roles, so northern and southern, which helps. So I focused on that northern region, ended up being the communication director for the Northern California. And that, again, a lot of the push was getting emails out to different people. We did we called it the Freedom Tour, where I worked with the volunteer coordinator, and he trucked around to all the colleges in Northern California with a tent and a table and just booth there. And even if it was just one person, it was something. Meanwhile, I was at home getting on the phone, getting radio interviews lined up. And also we organized one of the largest rallies for Gary Johnson that year, which was in Sacramento, which got a lot of press coverage, a lot of great media. It was a really good event. And that's definitely where I cut my teeth. And it was right after that both the state California party and the local Santa Clara County party were like, you're not leaving, right? You're going to stick around. And so that's when I signed on full time and ended up being the communication director for the state for a little while. And then I took a secretary role at the county, and then eventually was chair.
Yeah. So talk about that, being the chair at Santa Clara County.
It was fun. Again, I worked with this great team. They're all family to me at this point. It was hard because I worked with the toughest mentors, I think, in the party. And, they made sure I learned the bylaws. They made sure I learned RONAR. They made sure everything was done to a certain standard, and I love them for that. And then, we did a lot of pressure in the community itself of just having a presence. So we were boothing at events. We were going in parades. We were tabling at every, event we can find at colleges and at high schools. We were speaking at schools on career days and in government classes. And I think probably one of the best things we did was we just engaged in the ballot itself, where we were writing ballot arguments that get published in the book that gets sent to everybody.
Wow.
So you always see in the book, here's what's on your ballot, here's the pros, here's the cons. This is free advertisement for a party. And so me and Mark Hinkle, we sat down and we would write the pro or con, whichever side we were standing on, which was pretty much always con. And, we'd submit those. And so in 1 year, there were 33 ballot measures that we had to write. All of those tax measures, there was about $3 billion at stake in just one election in the county. So we didn't save it all off, but we did save about 30 million by defeating a couple of those measures. And a lot of it is just getting that message out there of like, hey, did you know we raised taxes in this particular school district already? And last 5 times we promised, new books, and they still haven't gotten it. So here they are asking for more money for books. So I'm very proud to say we defeated a school and took money from them. But in reality, we forced them to go back to their own board and say, we got to stop mismanaging our money. Let's actually buy the books this time.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's really impressive about that is really it was just y'all putting the footwork in. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it was. You were setting up tables, you were going out and you were talking to the community. You were getting the right information and you exposing that information out on the street right in front of everybody. And that's absolutely amazing. That's how we have to change things. That's exactly what we've been talking about on the show. So that's one absolutely practical way that you can get out and make a difference. I mean, look what y'all did. That's incredible.
Yeah, you definitely have to fight those local things, the ones that matter, right? It feels impossible to fight Biden right now. I think a lot of people can, like, really, this is a huge administration and they got their tentacles in every pore. What can I as a person do?
Yeah.
But what you can do is show up to your local city or county and stop measures there. And that's usually enough to impact your life and your neighbor's life and your schools. And that's where liberty really starts.
Amen. And a women. Yeah, that's awesome. So Kenneth says, what are some of the most important things you'd like to see new libertarians doing to help the cause? Jinni Imhoff Dousharm. Did I say that right again?
Yeah, that's correct. So, what are the most important things new libertarians can do? Get out there and say you're a libertarian. That's the most important thing. We need to give people permission to be a libertarian. I think a lot of people right now, it's the most important election ever. I have to vote, left, or I have to vote right. So, proudly being like, no, I voted different. I voted for libertarian. I sent a message, and I'm not going to go down saying I voted for the guy who screwed things up. I voted for the woman who offered a solution. And
that's right.
The more I say that, the more I have people around me going, I want to be on that winning side. Even if we didn't win the election, we are winning morally, we're winning, civilly. And give them permission. That way it's just a domino effect that more and more people are okay with saying I'm a libertarian.
Yeah,
I'm that libertarian.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like we talked about last night, and I've been mentioning this on social media here the last couple of days, I really do honestly believe we have the momentum. And so I think that's a great gasoline on the fire, is to give people permission to be libertarian, because, wow, things are really sensitive right now. So,
also get that bumper sticker on your car. That's probably one of the next best thing you can do is, make sure everyone knows there's libertarians in their town. In Santa Clara, we actually sent bumper stickers out to all the libertarians. And it was just a porcupine in the red, white, and blue. But you start seeing it pop up everywhere. Now, again, you're giving permission to say, oh, there's libertarians in my community. I'm not alone.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Promoting. Yeah, absolutely. The atmosphere is so toxic. That is absolutely amazing. That is so practical and easy. I'll say I do some of my part. I haven't contributed that well, but I do wear my Ron Swanson shirt and my libertarian hat everywhere. So there's no confusion when I'm out in public, unless they just completely blind to the porcupine. But so you were the Santa Clara County chair, and then you wanted to climb the ranks after that, and you ran into some legitimate trouble. Talk to us about that.
Well, getting involved, like I said, the more you get involved, the more you realize how corrupt things are, how bad things are, and why liberty matters. And so in my own neighborhood, I struggled to just get a dumpster, because all the trash is piling up. And I'm like, well, can we get a dumpster? And there's all this paperwork and bureaucracy. And there was political games because I was in a zone of where people were fighting over politics, and it got ridiculous. And so I ended up just running for city council. I'm like, this is the best thing I can do, is just get in there and actually do it myself and fix this problem. But I found myself running against a lady who was one of the most entrenched Democrats in California on a local level. And so how entrenched? Well, she used to be married to Kevin DeLeon. And for those who are not familiar, he was he was a Speaker of the House.
Wow.
I can't remember exactly. He was big, and he
Yeah.
also ran against Dianne Feinstein last election. But amazingly enough, he was too progressive for most Democrats, and so he didn't win that election. Um, but he's, again, very well connected, very well funded, and he wanted to make sure he himself had a good stronghold in San Jose. And so he made sure his ex-wife was well taken care of in that regard.
Right.
And I believe she raised about $80,000 for that election, for a re-election, where the average is, $2,000 to $5,000 that somebody
Right.
will run for city council.
Right.
So she had a lot of money going after her, and there was a lot of dirty tricks. I won't say she did anything wrong, but I will say my tires were slashed 6 times during that election.
That's
So
crazy.
there's some very, very passionate Democrats out there who were not happy I was running against her.
Wow.
In the process, we found out she was not living in the district that she was supposed to be representing, which is a rule. I'm like, that's weird. So somebody came to me and was like, hey, I hired a private investigator. I have proof. So I took that and I submitted it to the city's fair practices and election committee. I'm like, hey, I don't think she's following the rules. Here's the formal paperwork. They opened an investigation. Turns out she was not living in the right district. They decided not to do anything about it. And then she ended up using city resources. So she was using the Twitter and the Facebook that were formal city modes of communication to emphasize her reelection campaign. Submitted more paperwork saying, hey, this is against the rules. You can't use these resources unless I'm allowed to use them too. Did an investigation. Turns out, yeah, it's true. She's doing that. Are you going to do anything about it? No. Yes. And then we're like, why is this going on? So we actually dug through her paperwork. We're kind of curious about $80,000 being poured into her account. And she wasn't filing the paperwork correctly. So you're supposed to, when you make a donation of a certain level, include your employer and your profession.
Right.
It's a mediocre thing. Most people are like, why does this matter? Well, if your employer is the city and your profession is attorney, that's going to start raising some alarms, especially if you're maxing these donations out. And sure enough, it's the attorney who's deciding that these rules are fine to break. So there is this vicious cycle happening. And, hey, by the way, he gets a raise this year. The funny thing is, after all this was said and done, a news report came out, was published by one of the local medias, that I was responsible for costing the city over $150,000. Where's that money coming from? In third-party investigations. So because I triggered those investigations that were proven to be valid, I'm at fault. I'm the jerk who costed the city that money, not the person who broke the rules.
Yeah, Brandy says it just fine. Yeah. Lord have mercy.
Yeah, so I didn't win. I came in second out of third, which is still pretty good for all the stuff I was dealing with.
Absolutely.
But more importantly, we left a bad taste in the county with who she was, because she showed her colors.
Yeah.
She ended up being removed as vice mayor, and she was knocked down to just city council member. And then she was also running for county supervisor, and she lost that race. And so her name's Mud. And so at the very least, now she's back on a level playing field as all the other candidates.
Hey, whatever we can do, that's a start, right? And all that exposure, maybe people won't vote for her, and maybe they'll start digging into the people that she's affiliated with and won't vote for them.
Yeah. Well, more importantly, any candidate is well aware that the libertarians in Santa Clara County are alive. They're paying attention. They're digging through the paperwork. So you better dot your I's, cross your T's, and play fair, because they're going to call you out on it.
Yeah. You said that I'm pretty sure you told, correct me if I'm wrong, that they harassed you specifically because you're running as a libertarian.
Correct. So I think it was the Mercury News that put out an op-ed or their their board put out an op-ed that said that I was wrong for the city because of my libertarian views, and that the city wasn't ready for these fiscally conservative views, which is funny because now in the pandemic, they're like, hey, you know what? We need to like lower these taxes on these businesses. I'm like, yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, I mean, that's why everybody's leaving California, because they're getting smothered with taxes.
It is. And so I like to harass the mayor even to this day, because he's on there posting like, hey, I'm going to lower the business taxes because that's the right thing to do. And I'm like, that's funny. I was the one campaigning to do that, and you said that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
So
yes. Didn't you run for another chair or seat after that?
I did. I went for school board because, I still was very passionate about my community. Even if I didn't get city council, there are ways I can impact change. And these schools are out of hand with their spending. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll run there. But they quickly ran somebody else to make sure they got in ahead of me. They were stalking me at the meetings. I even tried running for neighborhood commission, and they would go to those meetings and take pictures. The harassment level was insane. And I think at one point, my husband was at a city council meeting to talk about a totally different subject. He was representing the party. And as soon as he took the stand, the lady I was running against stood up from her chair, leaned over, and started using her personal phone to take pictures of him in an intimidation tactic. So he actually kind of stopped, and he's like, is this okay? Can she do that? And they're like, yep, and your clock's still ticking. You now have 1 minute left to speak. Yeah. So it's insane, the level of corruption and pressure. They want to be a one-party city and a one-party county, and they're determined to keep it that way.
Well, this is something that I argue with, or maybe not so much anymore, but with people that aren't libertarian and habitually tell us that we don't have a chance. But I don't believe that for a second, because I think they're scared, and I'm not afraid to say it. I'll say it all day. I think they're scared. There's a reason they collude in court, Democrats and Republicans, against us to keep us off ballots. There's a reason that they're harassing you to do it, and that's because we have the momentum and they're scared.
That's true. And it takes one person to stand up and correct that. So, I was the first to really stand up and take those hits. But since me, a lot of other libertarians are running, and they're not having as hard of a time because they didn't kick me down, and they didn't keep me away. I kept running. I kept pushing. I never went away. And so they're like, well, I guess those tactics don't work. And so that's the most important thing. It really just takes one to stand up and say enough, and then it paves the way and makes it so much easier for every libertarian after that.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, and I like the word pioneer, right? Like you're paving a way through a wilderness that a lot of people haven't even wanted or had the courage to want to try to do. Yes. That's we're not running anymore. They're scared now. They're running now. We'll be the change.
They are. They know we're awake, right? The porcupine's up. We puffed up our quills.
Yeah. And as bad as they kept the voter suppression or the news suppression and promotion down for Joe Jorgensen, we're still making headway. We're still making steam. Your state is a great resemblance of that, of how it doesn't matter. We're going to keep our foot to the grind and keep going. Brandy says never cave.
No, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, and look what's going on. Don't you have a convention coming up in your state?
Our state convention's not actually till next year. We're one of the few states that do a 2-year cycle.
Okay.
One of the first things I did as soon as I got into being chair was force the party to relook at their bylaws. And, we had a huge struggle that our bylaws were not drafted originally with a pandemic in mind. And so we had a huge kerfuffle of how do we hold a convention digitally. We eventually got it through. It took some, button heads together and figuring it out so that we can keep it legitimate. We didn't want to break any rules in the process. Found a way. And so now we're going through and we're correcting that. So got a great team on the bylaws committee. They're fixing that. We're also looking at moving to a yearly convention, and doing all these little things that will enable people to get involved, and feel like their voice is heard in the Libertarian Party.
So what's the next step for y'all in Idaho?
Well, right now the legislation's wrapping up. They've kept us very busy. It was just announced that our governor vetoed 2 bills. It was HB 135 and it was SB 1136. Both of those were designed to limit the powers of the governor during an emergency. This is specifically targeting, can you enforce a mask mandate statewide? How long can you keep us shut down? They really wanted to say, if you're going to go past 60 days, you need to force the legislation to come in and have a say in the matter so that the people have a say in the matter. Yeah. It passed the House and the Senate, but the governor was quick to be like, I don't like this. I like my power. So there's some bad things like that, but some good things is that, they tried to block cannabis legalization and that failed. So that sends a really good signal. We're one of the last strongholds of a state that keep cannabis illegal. And we're putting a really good fight to make that legal. The people want it legal. So they try to limit it on a state level through the legislation itself, and that failed. We're in the process of doing a civil, initiative where the people are putting this on the ballot. And because that's getting traction, the legislation quickly put together a bill to say, we're going to make it harder for civil legislations to get through. So that's yet to be heard. But it is interesting because they want to say that every single county has to sign off on this before it can go on the ballot. Which is, in a nice way of saying everybody should get a voice, the rural versus the city. But it also means one county can veto an entire legislative action.
Okay, so our state is going through this right now in Mississippi. I'm actually from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, but I live in Mississippi. That's where I met my wife. We voted in the November election for Initiative 65, and that was to pass medical marijuana. And I even kind of gave the governor crap on his own Facebook page because he was like, no, we can't sign off on this. We can't sign off on this. It'll just be weed shops everywhere. I'm kidding you. He blew it way out. Anyway, we blew him way out and overwhelmingly voted for it. Now it's caught up in the Supreme Court because one of the, or I believe, I don't want to say, it was one of our counties, one of our cities took it up the legislative branch, I believe, and took it to court saying that we didn't do it constitutionally because we were using older counts from counties. It sounds very similar to what you're talking about. Is why I'm bringing that up.
They definitely keep trying to move the goalposts on these things. It's fascinating that they base this. You have to get so many signatures based on the last election. But of course, last election was a blowout. And so we have a lot of hurdles. When you have a record number of people registering to vote, now we have to meet percentages of that. Not voter turnout, just registration. But it's, they're scared. They don't like the people standing up for themselves, which means what we're doing is working. It means people are paying attention. It means people are tired of the duopoly and the corruption, and they're willing to stand up. And that's the big takeaway everyone needs to say. Now is the time to get involved. Now is the time to push for liberty.
Let me ask you this: since y'all push for bills and legislation to restrict the your governor's, emergency powers, how are y'all able to go about even getting that started? And what could we do? Call our legislators, call our senators, or whatever. What can we do? And then how do we get around that? If he can just shoot it down from vetoing it, how do we get around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. What happened, a lot of this was just the conservative vote in Idaho. We never really fully shut down like some states, and so it was controversial because we didn't have the same issues as, say, California or New York. So why are we being subject to the same response?
Right.
And I think that left a bad taste in everybody's mouth, regardless of political party. So there was a good push. It takes, as a party, it's important for us, especially like me as chair, to get that message out. Did you know this was a legislative ballot? Did you know that they're voting on it? Here's how to contact your legislation. Even if it's not a libertarian bill, there's still a lot we can do. And I think that's probably one of the missing components of what libertarian means to the general public is, well, what exactly do you guys stand for? They know we stand against a lot of things, but what do we stand for? What are the solutions that we're offering? And so you have to arm your voters and your registers and your fans with what is that right answer? We have to go out there and say more than just taxation's theft. We have to go out there and say, hey, did you know this bill is blowing up and it has, 1.8% interest, which is going to blow things out of the proportion. Hey, did you know we already increased this bill or this budget? And so once you arm people with the actual data, suddenly they start listening. And that's the big thing libertarians can do, is just start talking about the issues themselves.
Yeah. And get involved with your local, state, county, if you have affiliates. That's the best. That's the way I've learned is being reached out to and reaching out to is my local people here in Mississippi and Louisiana, and just learning, like say, hey, here's the job, start doing it. And go get it. I mean, but the first thing we got to do is we got to try. And I think that's what you're so inspiring, like everything you've gone through, and to have gotten to the point that you're at now is phenomenal and very inspiring. And I just want people to know that you got to take the first step. Definitely a focus on calls to action.
Yeah. Well, I had a great mentor in a previous life of mine. And one of the most important lessons he instilled in me is all you have to do is ask. And that's one of the most important, powerful messages to we know this, but we have to remind ourselves, what's the worst? They say no and we're back to square one. So all you have to do is show up and ask. And so show up and ask your governor to do something different. Show up and ask your city council to think about things in a different way. And that's half the battle. So once you encourage people to just show up and ask, what can I do? That's what's going to stir the pot and really get things moving.
Yeah. I mean, arguing online and calling everybody lolbatarians ain't cutting it. I mean, we got a lot of work ahead of us. We have all the steam and we just got to put that one foot in front of the other. I'll say definitely a focus on calls to action.
Call your local party, call your state party and ask, what can I do? One of the things that I did as a state chair, I'm already in the position of being a volunteer, but I applied that to the state. I showed up to my Secretary of State. All I had to do was ask. And I said, hey, will you take a meeting with me? And I was really surprised that he said, yeah, sure, come on in. And so I ended up, shooting it with him for about 3 hours one night. And we talked about election law, and we went over all the different nuances of what a party needs to follow and how the party fits into the bigger scheme of things. One of the best things about Idaho, and we're such a lower keel compared to California, that he took the meeting and he was more than happy to sit down and have these conversations. So I sat and I talked to him. We had a lot of election law issues that we're fighting here in the state. But I specifically talked to him about, hey, what does it take to do a citizens initiative? Because I want to get things forward. He's like, but you're a party. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I want to get something on the ballot that removes the grocery tax. And I want it to say the Libertarian Party did this, not the Friends of Liberty, not the Friends of Taxes. I want it to have my name slapped on there because that's advertising. And he's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, I guess you can do that. And I'm like, even if it fails, that's going to send this huge, strong message to all the voters that the Libertarian Party cares about that bottom line in families' pockets. 6%, that's like 4 gallons of milk for an average family of 4. It adds up real quick. And I want everyone to associate that with the party. And he's kind of like, that's a great idea. Yeah, you can do that. Well, lo and behold, within 48 hours, suddenly the Republican Party came out that they want to remove the same tax. And so at the end of the day, does the Libertarian Party get credit for it? No. But because all I did was ask for that meeting, now we have movement to remove that tax. And that's what I want at the end of the day. I want that tax gone, and I want people to keep their money. It might not be a libertarian win, but it's a win for we the people. And that's what I'm really seeking. So it was a simple meeting. It was a simple ask, but just showing up, that's half the battle.
Yeah, that's so crazy because that's actually how this relationship started. I just simply asked, hey, would you like to come on the show? Can I talk to you? And then here we are talking. I mean, it's just having the courage to put that one foot in front of the other and make that first step. And that's also a great program that you have there, because we have another. She was actually one of the first on the show, Bobo Sims, and she runs a hub, and that she encourages her people to do the same thing that you're talking about. Like, go do one nice thing for one person a day and just tell them a libertarian did it.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. You know, go help out the homeless camps, go show up at a shelter, go work with the women shelters. There's a lot of these little things you can do. Like I mentioned before, we do career days, and just showing up and talking at a career day as a political, person. I work with a party. That was enough to just light a fire with all these kids of like, oh, I didn't know my city was so accessible. I didn't know I could influence change.
That's incredible. I mean, just the impact that you can make just with such simple moves. I mean, and then on the youth level, especially, I mean, that's absolutely incredible. And you worked with a women's organization in California, right?
Yeah, I was with the League of Women Voters. So they're nonpartisan, but they're really focused on getting out the vote. And educating voters. And so that was a lot of lessons I pulled from them of how to get involved, how to get that message out there. So even if I don't fully align with all their values, there was enough of a Venn diagram that when I can work with them, you can impact change. That's another one where I remember showing up to a meeting and they're asking questions about, oh, well, they want to change the city charter. And they want to shuffle some power around. They're looking at going from a strong mayor or a weak mayor to a strong mayor. And so the League of Women Voters was looking at this, and they're like, yeah, I guess it's a nuanced thing. We don't really have a stance, so maybe we'll pass and not do anything about this. And all I did is sitting at that table as the lone libertarian, also the only person under 60. And I said, but, wait, I have a question. What is this going to do to this one particular district? And immediately all these people, and some of them are former city council members, they're all very influential. They all kind of sat back on their heels and go, oh, I didn't think of that question. So it started a whole study. We ended up doing a study. It turns out we didn't like what it meant, especially for that undeveloped community, and we took a stance against it. And once the league takes a stance against it, suddenly it died in committee, and the city didn't go forward with this measure. I didn't have to fight for it. I didn't have to do anything. All I did was ask a simple question. And that's really the power that libertarians have of, you show up to this meeting and go, really? Do we really want to try the same thing we've been doing over and over again? Do we really want to look at this the same way, or do you want to try a new approach?
Wow, is now the right time for that?
Yes.
Wow.
People are listening. They're eager for a new approach. So now's the time to show up to those meetings and just ask.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've thought about running for city clerk as well, or city council, sorry. Mm-hmm. Or we have aldermen down here, it's different everywhere. Same thing. But then I took a step back and I said, you know what, before I get overly ambitious with that, let me just start showing up to council meetings and learning your people and learning what it is that we need in our communities. And that's the next step for me, is learning what it is that we need in this area specifically. And for somebody that's come up through those ranks, I think I think we all need to hear these stories. I mean, that's absolutely incredible how far you've come, and really just through courage, I mean, really, if I summed it up in a word, it would be courage, right? Going
I'd go
through
with
and just
stubborn, but
stubborn. I think the two aren't mutually exclusive, though, right?
yeah.
They kind of have to conflate a little. Yeah, you got to be a little stubborn to be courageous, I would believe. But to go through all those things and to be that ambitious and to go through the slashing of the flat tires and the harassment and the having to leave California and never giving up and completely keeping your foot on the gas the whole time. I think on behalf of everybody here, we just say thank you. That's awesome.
Well, we do it for the kids, right? Like it might have sucked for me, but if my kids can have a better future, even just that much better, that's what matters. So
Yeah, I mean, same. I got 3 of those guys. Yeah, I mean, and that's what we kind of talked about before. Is I got tired of waiting on somebody else. Especially over the summer. I've been a libertarian for a while, but over the summer made me really an activist of watching all these people suffer and going through what they went through, and at the hands of people that won't even, rules for thee, but not for me.
yeah.
It's incredible, and it really. And I was same as you. Really, down here we were not a fully closed state. We were partially closed. We were a red state, so we opened right back up. I mean, pretty much quickly. But I hurt for the people around my country to watch them have to suffer at the hands of these tyrants. I don't know what else to call them.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, when it's something like a pandemic, you need to address it locally. Every local community is different in their demographics and their health and how much movement and what stores. But it really did highlight the importance of the libertarian values and why we need, less, zoning laws.
Yeah.
That's one of those weird issues that came up is like, well, if you zone out all the bodegas and all the small shops and you force everybody to have to funnel into these big box stores, well, now you're funneling everybody into a hotspot for COVID. If we were all shopping locally and I had a little bodega on the corner, only the neighbors were going to, well, our neighborhood would be sheltered. Or if somebody got it, we'd immediately know and kind of isolate. But we don't have that. If we had more bodegas, more people would decide mask, no mask, take a choice. But if we're stuck with just big box stores, just corporate changes, now we're all stuck with a federal answer. So there is a lot of libertarian solutions to this whole process that just got ignored. And so it's a great time for us to stand up and say, hey, that thing we've been championing this whole time? Well, if you listened, we could have avoided a lot of this. Hey, that thing that you said solved the issue and protected you, yeah, that's the thing we've been pushing for more of. And so we really got to get out there and take credit for these ideas. That's the big thing.
Yeah. So again, that's just circling right back to circle back, Saki, circling right back to. Now I lost my train of thought. Just getting the word out there, promoting, telling people, doing good things for people, and telling them that, hey, check out the libertarian way, check out libertarianism. I say this a lot, and some of my people might get tired of me saying this, but I don't care. Something that I try to do, and I've had a lot of success with, and that's on a daily basis. I have a lot of conversations with new people, and what I try to do is have at least one conversation a day with a new person about how the government sucks. I make it really simple. Just, this is how they suck. Now let's have a conversation about it. And it's like a no-fail answer because everybody's going to agree on some level that the government sucks. And now that gives me a road right into like, well, hey, do you know about the LP? Do you know about my show? Do you know about this Facebook page? Do you know about the Libertarian Party of Idaho? I mean, it's chalk it on your car, word of mouth. Yeah, exactly.
But it's true. You got to get that word out there. One of those good final thoughts to kind of, wrap up our call here is I had a great professor, and he talked about it was public life was the greater topic. He was not a libertarian, but he drilled in every single class and every single lesson. There was a chant almost that we had, and he'd ask the same 3 questions: who's in, who's out, who decides? And so every time we had a policy issue, every time we talked about what is a utopia, what are the rules of society, it was followed with those 3 questions: who's in, who's out, who decides? And that's really a libertarian approach. That's the 3 things we're constantly asking ourselves. Where the other parties, they've made that decision. They know who's in, they know who's out, and they don't care who decides as long as it's them. But as soon as you phrase it that way, well, like a mask policy, okay, who's in the store, who's not allowed in the store, who gets to decide? As soon as
Right.
you're, give that power of who decides, people are like, well, the employee should decide. You're right. The employee should decide. So does that mean the government gets to decide? Well, no. Like, let's give that power back to the people. And so everything you're doing when you're out there talking to people, follow those 3 questions: who's in, who's out, who decides. And that changes your whole perspective of how you're looking at policy. A lot of times it'll end with, well, I decide, and that's fine. That's great. But at least we know now that you're looking at an authoritarian approach. You want that final decision, and you don't really care what's on the other side. But you force them to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so incredible. I'm actually, I don't guess I have to tell you, I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, no, please. That's why I'm going to leave everybody with that final thought, Go out there and remind everybody who's in, who's out, who decides.
That's so great. Well, thank you so much. You were awesome.
All right. Well, thank you. Good luck.
Yeah. Thank you. And thanks for coming on. And I look forward to talking with you about how much you're moving the party forward in Idaho.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much. All right. Bye. All right. So that is awesome. Another fantastic story. I mean, this is incredible. You are watching it live. They're giving us the answers. We're making the moves. We're making movement. We're going to lead the charge. This is our turn. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow my page, Twitter, all that Instagram stuff. Hate the plugs. But anyway, so thank you very much. Love you guys. I'll see y'all real soon. Oh, yeah, real quick. We are going to back-to-back a few of these. Over the weekend, we've got some an event and a couple other things going on. And it's going to be lightning. So thank you very much. Y'all get on and follow Libertarian Party of Idaho and like her page and follow them doing amazing things. So love y'all. Talk to y'all soon. Bye.